All right, so we're going to get into step 11, and we are at the bottom of page 85. And I'll just go ahead and start reading. So you can label it in your book. Step 11, italicized words, just label it right there. Step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. So it suggests both. We shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer. Better men than we are using it constantly. I have this highlighted. It works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. So I have that highlighted. It would be easy to be vague about this matter, yet we believe we can make some definite and valuable suggestions. Now, I have on the top of my page labeled at night and in the morning. So step 11, and this was shown to me very early, and I'm glad someone showed this to me very early. You'll run across some people that say, well, we're not on step 11, so we're not going to go to that. That's fine, but this part in the book tells me no matter how sober I am, one day, 50 years, it gives me directions on what to do when I awaken. It gives me directions to do what I do during the day. It gives me directions to do before I go to bed. So I'm glad it was shown to me very early. Because, this is the step that really separates AA as a great recovery miracle or a cult. And we'll see why. When we retire at night, so I have that highlighted. And we have this meeting right now. It's in the evening. You guys can start doing this when you retire at night, tonight, before you go to bed. These are directions. So I have this whole paragraph bracketed. We constructively review our day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? And as we have already gone through step 4, and step 3, what are the 2 things that make me want to drink the most? They said it right off the bat. Resentful. Resentment is the number 1 offender. Anger's not for us. And selfishness. It's not the alcohol, it's not the drugs. It's resentment, it's selfishness, it's dishonesty, it's fear. Those are the things that cause me to drink. So they're telling me before I retire at night, is there any time during the day that I felt those things? I promise you did. Remember, these defects, these shortcomings, these sins, they don't leave us, but we know how to handle them because of this program. Here's a question. Do we owe an apology? So notice it no longer says amends. So an amends, that's a part of the moral inventory. And if we haven't, if we've harmed someone once or more than once, an amends is what can I do to make it right? At this point in the steps, we should know exactly what we have done if we have harmed somebody. So we can make an apology. We can say, if I called somebody an a-hole, I know exactly what I did. I can make an apology right then and there. The former me wouldn't. The former me would say that and then build up a whole bunch more resentments and not do anything about it, which makes for more drinking. So I have that circle. Do we owe an apology? The big book now uses apology and not amends. At this point, after doing step 10, we should know when we're causing harm. And again, it's a lifetime agenda. Here's another question. Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? For example, my friend right here, he's 3 decades sober. I walk in the room. He says, I got to talk to you about something. There's something, if we have something we need to talk about, the old me would just shove it down as deep as possible, especially if I was going through depression or anxiety, or if I was angry, or if I was dishonest, I would shove that away, or I would drink it away. Now I feel those things and I know that I've done them. So I want to get them out and I want to talk with someone immediately. 3 decades sober, he's still asking you to talk to someone immediately. I still do it. So it's important. Like I said, step 10 is a rolling 4 through 9. That makes sense to some of you here, but not everybody. Let's see. So if we kept something to ourselves, which should be discussed with another person at once, were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time? Or were we thinking of what we could do for others, of what we could pack into the stream of life? And what is the biggest solution to our problem?
Drinking.
Solution to our problem. When we are drinking, that is the solution to our problem. When we're in recovery, what is the number one thing that takes away that obsession to drink? My constant thought of others. Altruism. Going all the way back before page 1. My problem is selfishness. What do I have to do to get out of selfishness? I got to try to make an attempt to help somebody. Remember if, Bill Wilson, I've said this, 1,000 times. What did he do before there was AA? Before there was sponsorship, before there was anything? He would go to a hospital and ask the doctor there, Dr. Silkworth, can I talk to some of your patients who were also alcoholics? None of them stayed sober. He didn't realize that for 6 months, but who stayed sober? Bill stayed sober. That's what he realized. His attempt to try to help somebody, preferably an alcoholic, kept him sober for that day. So we have to try to get into that constant thought of other people, because my mind is consumed with me. My mind is consumed with everything that, me, selfishness.
What about loneliness?
What's loneliness?
Is it selfish?
And when I say selfish, like I had a family member that take this the wrong way. They thought it was like an insult. When they describe selfishness, it's describing my mind, and all that I think about is me. Closed-minded, my problems, my depression. Depression is constantly thinking about negativity. Loneliness is self-pity, constantly thinking about myself and why I'm alone. So when I stay in that mind and I'm an alcoholic, what is the solution for that? What is the solution for any of it? Drinking. I don't want to feel lonely. I don't want to feel angry. I don't want to feel depressed. I don't want to feel anxious. Whatever I'm feeling, I'm thinking about me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the booze and the drugs are not the problem. They're the solution to what my real problem is, which stems in selfishness. From selfishness, and this goes back to step 3, stems resentment, fear, anxiety, all of it, jealousy. So the best way for me to get out of that is to take action to try to help somebody. And everybody in this room, what do they have that can help somebody? Your depression, your anxiety, your fear, your drinking experience, your getting high, all that stuff, when you're sober, is experience that can be used to help somebody else. Because they don't want to listen to someone that's normal. They don't want to listen to someone that can control their drinking or control their drugs. They want to listen to somebody who couldn't, and then they got sober. How did you do that? How did you get a day? Everybody has the power through God to help somebody. That's what Bill realized in the beginning. So these are, if I'm constantly thinking about my problems, I need to think of what can I do for another person. And the best way to do that is to go to a lot of meetings. Because if you start going to a lot of meetings, you're going to gain each day of sobriety, and all of a sudden you're going to start meeting newcomers that come in with a day or 2 days or 3 days. Can someone with 2 days help somebody with a day? Absolutely. Absolutely. There's people with 1 day that can help people that are 30 years. Mm-hmm. If I didn't see any newcomers walk through that door, I wouldn't be here. So I'm glad you're here. It's a blessing you're here, all of you. Because if I knew this, if nobody ever came back, that would tell me that alcoholism works. Let me try it again. But it doesn't. So newcomers help guys like us all the time. Okay, so highlight that. What we could do for others should always be a part of your thinking, or trying to get it a part of your thinking. But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, so like you just were talking about, for that would diminish my usefulness to others. When I'm in that kind of thinking, I don't want to help anybody. I think I can't help anybody. And then it says, to summarize, after making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. And you can write this stuff down. Before you go to bed, write this stuff down. Who do you need to talk to? Where was I selfish? Is there somebody that needs help that I might be able to help, or shoot them a text? Write it down. So that's at night. So that's right before I go to bed. Next paragraph, bracket the whole thing. And this is first thing in the morning. So again, this is good for anybody new in recovery because, like me, I'd be like, what do I do? I'm going to meetings. What else do I do? This explains what do I do. So never forget these pages that we're going through. On awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. So I wake up in the morning, my eyes open, and guess what? I'm an alcoholic. And my mind goes directly to me, my job, my money, what am I going to do? So I have to recognize right when I open my eyes that I'm an alcoholic, that if I drink, I'm not going to stop. If I use, I'm not going to stop. So I need my thinking to be directed to God. And they're telling me here, before I even start, I ask God to direct my thinking. My thinking got me here. His thinking does a whole lot better. So, it's starting to get us into that meditation. We're not into prayer yet. We're just asking God to direct our thinking. So upon awakening, I'm in step 1. I need God, and God is in steps 2 and steps 3. I believe in God. I came to believe God is or he isn't. We discussed that in step 2. And then step 3 is I have to turn my life and will over to the care of God. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance, for after all, God gave us brains to use. I have this highlighted. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. That is a promise, absolutely. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. So again, I'm still in my meditation and prayer when I'm waking up in the morning. I'm now thinking about my day. Here's the directions, and I would highlight this. Here we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought, or a decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We are often surprised how the right answers come after we have tried this for a while. I have that underlined like 4 times. So don't expect some overwhelming God-conscious moment just because I did this for the first time. We got to try it for a while. We got to practice. But when I do this, top of page 87, what used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. That is another promise. The old me didn't want anything to do with people, much less, think that I could do something for other people. Today, it's become a working part of my mind. My prayer has changed. I'm not into repetitive prayer. I'm praying for other people, different people, every single day. So that's a promise that absolutely comes true. Being still inexperienced and having just made a conscious contact with God, so they're still talking for people that, may not know God and they're on step 11. They're willing to understand him, but they may not know him on until step 11. How many people know the one true God in this room? Okay. It is not probable we are going to be inspired at all times. We might pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. I have this highlighted. Nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely upon it. That is a promise. So when I say, this is a promise, a lot of people read those 9th step promises in a meeting. When you start going to AA a lot, there's 9th step promises. There's actually over 200 promises in this entire book, in the 164 pages. So a promise is something that, even though it may have not come true for you yet, when you do this work, this is what happens. It comes true. And I used to not believe any promises in this book at all. And then I can say today that every one of them has come true. So if you don't believe what these authors are saying here, it's okay. Just keep doing what they're telling us to do. This is important. I would circle this whole next sentence. We usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that we be shown all through the day what our next step is to be, that we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. So that's very important. Conclude the period of meditation with a prayer. So they're telling me meditation before prayer. What is meditation? It's listening. There's nothing to it. I used to think you had to have this crazy skill to meditate no. You're closing your eyes. You're trying to differentiate your thoughts. Your thoughts are selfish, dishonesty, what I want. But if you're thinking about someone else, someone from your childhood, someone you met in a meeting, your parents, your children, that's from God. That's not from you. So whoever pops in your mind, I always pray for that person that pops in my mind. And that stops repetitive prayer. When you start meditating before prayer and actually thinking, taking the time in a quiet spot, right after you get up, paying attention to the thoughts that are in your head, it's going to direct you. God is going to direct your prayer. So pay attention in meditation. Take a few minutes. Don't just close your eyes and open them. Think about what's going on in your mind. And again, just try to separate the selfish thoughts from the thoughts that you're wondering, why are those there? Why is that person there? Pray for that person. And if you do that consistently every single day, your prayer changes. It's not repetitive. And that's a part of that relationship with God. You're coming to rely upon him. It's not about me wanting to do the prayer my way. It's you're listening to God. He's showing you, and then you're talking to him. It changed my life when I started doing this. Just that one sentence in the book, meditation before prayer. And I have the rest of this highlighted. We ask especially for freedom from self-will and are careful to make no requests for ourselves only. How many times, I spent years praying to God for things that I want. I want a new car. I want a new job. I want whatever it was. That's still me, me, me. The authors of this book are telling me that's wasting time. And let me finish it. We are careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that, and it doesn't work. You can easily see why. Why doesn't it work? Is praying for material things something that God wants for you? Probably not. If you've read any part of the Bible, probably not. So how can my prayer change where I'm not thinking about me? Praying for other people. Praying for their wants. What is he thinking? What is my son thinking? What is my daughter thinking? What is, anybody, that newcomer, that person that I met or that person that I saw on the street? Pray for that person. We don't have to know people that we pray for. But if that thought comes when you're listening to God, pray for him and start making a habit of it every single morning. taking that time right when you wake up, I truly believe it's one of the most important parts of your day. If I wake up and go, I'm going to struggle. I've done it before. And then I start thinking, what didn't I do today? Oh, I didn't meditate. I didn't pray. I didn't bring God in. So I open my eyes. Yeah, I'm an alcoholic, but then I start acting alcoholically with resentment and fear and, whatever else. So highlight that. Praying for ourselves and our wants is, we don't do it unless it says that others may be helped. If circumstances warrant, we ask our wives or friends to join us in morning meditation, group prayer. It's awesome if you have that. Ask someone to pray with you if you want. Pray for you if you want. If we belong to a religious denomination, which requires a definite morning devotion, we attend to that also. If not members of religious bodies, we sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers which emphasize the principles we have been discussing. I would highlight this, circle this. There are many helpful books also. So when are they saying this direction in the book? On step 11. So when I came to AA, I had a stack of books. I had a Bible, I had all these self-help books, and just listened. Self-help. That should tell us alone that doesn't work. But there's thousands of self-help books. It's telling us in step 11, after we come to know God, after we come to know what alcoholism is, after we've done an amends process, then we want to start seeking other books. And it's important. It says suggestions about these may be obtained from one's priest, minister, or rabbi. You notice the people they're mentioning there. So what book do you think they're kind of suggesting we should start reading?
The Bible.
I would go to the Bible. But I wouldn't start at the beginning. I wouldn't start right at the beginning of Genesis. I would go right to the Gospel of John. If you want to know who God is, if you want to know truly who Jesus is, go right to the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Verse 14, the Word became flesh. Yes, ma'am.
Isn't there more than one John?
What's that?
Isn't there more than one John?
Yeah, there is.
And which John
But,
are you talking
so I'm talking about the Apostle John. So the Gospel of John is the Apostle John. But you're right. Yeah, there's John the Baptist. There's other Johns as well. But the Gospel of John, there's no other gospel written by another John. Okay. And then it says, I would highlight this. Be quick to see where religious people are right. Make use of what they offer. So are we supposed to bash religion in AA? Nope. I have this, that's the third time they've said this. Now again, no, this is a program where you can pick your own God. You have the freedom to do that. And that's fine because most people that wouldn't do that wouldn't come to AA. So AA actually brings people, from all kinds of beliefs that can't stop drinking, which I think is a good thing. But if you don't seek, if you don't take this step very seriously to know who God is, you can get sober, but you're not going to get saved. And that's where this group, that's why this group is called The Way. We concentrate on Jesus Christ. So even though I've always been a believer, I've been a believer my entire life, I still couldn't stop drinking. I came in, I believed in God, I couldn't stop drinking. I had to understand what alcoholism was, and then when I started following the directions of helping other people, making the attempt to help other people, I found a relationship with God. And then, right up to this day, I started seeking all those other books. I started studying all those other religions and found out how they started. Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormonism and, that were founded in the 1800s, 1800 years after the resurrection. My best advice I can give you is to seek the resurrection itself. Did it happen? And look for the evidence of how it happened. The eyewitnesses, over 500 of them. James and Jude, his brothers, not believing, and then they believed. When? After the resurrection. I mean, just there's so much that you can seek just about the resurrection, because if Jesus did truly rise from the grave, that should convince you that he's God. So, again, this Alcoholics Anonymous does offer other higher powers. But you have to remember what mind that we have. So that belief of a concept of a higher power or a concept of a God is what? It's an idea. I feel that I want to believe this way. Does it make it true? Step 11 tells us we have to seek the truth. And if I have a mind that can't differentiate the true from the false, remember when we went back and studied that word idea, imagined in the mind, and we're not supposed to trust our feelings? Just because I feel that this might be the right God doesn't make it so. You want to seek that. You want to seek who Jesus is in step 11. That's my advice to you. And the Bible is, you got to remember, we did the history of this. Without the Bible, there'd be no Alcoholics Anonymous. It started out as a Christian organization, and it went, it went the other direction. But you also have to understand the history of Bill Wilson. So after Bob Smith died, what happened with Bill Wilson? He started getting an overload of higher power. He started thinking that all spiritual things were good. He even had saying, you read these other books like Pass It On and Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers, he had seances in his house, talking to the dead. He died of emphysema. He couldn't stop smoking. He stopped drinking. The doctors gave him a lot of LSD, which was legal at the time, but it's, that's a bad drug, bad drug. And he wanted to recommend that to other alcoholics. So after Bob died, that spiritual overload, I think, was a very negative thing. And if the steps truly work for drinking and, drugs, which they do, they work for anything. Anybody will tell you, any old timer, that you plug whatever your problem is to these 12 steps, you can recover from it. He can never recover from smoking.
I use the steps to quit smoking.
Yep. So, that's how he died. And I truly believe that those seances, whatever he was doing in his house, summoning other, beings, I think that was his downfall. So, step 11, you want to seek. And I'm not going to force Jesus down anybody's throat. That's no one, especially in Alcoholics Anonymous, isn't going to, most of the time, that 90% of the time, that doesn't work. But if you just tell them to seek, if you tell them, the Bible isn't a book written by man, that there's actually 40 authors, it's actually a minimum of 66 different books, up to 80 if you count other religions. But the prophecies in the Bible is unbelievable. You can't deny the miracles that people said would happen 600 years before it happened. So an example, we're coming up on Palm Sunday. When Jesus entered Jerusalem on a donkey, that was predicted by Zechariah 600 years before he was born. Before he was born. Daniel predicted it on the exact day. So, did that happen once or twice? It happened a minimum of 1,800 times. Some scholars say 2,000 to 2,500 prophecies that one person said it here, and hundreds of years later it came true. The Bible has examples, minimum 1,800 prophecies coming true. That alone should help you to seek it, So read the books, seek everything. I did. I was a believer. I never doubted God. I never stopped believing in God, but I wanted to know, why did these other religions start? Why do we have such a spiritual overload? All higher powers are good, and they're not. If you get to the point where you believe Jesus rose from the dead, and he died for you, he died for everybody, He died for the shortcomings, the defects that we study about in this book, which are just sins. They're just sins. And he's asking us just to put our trust in him. That's what the gospel is. You believe that he died for our sins and rose again to give us eternal life. That's the gospel. You believe in that and seek that, you're saved. He doesn't ask anything from us because I can't do enough to get into heaven. I can't just be a good person and get into heaven. I got to trust in him. So if I believe that, then there is only one God. So anybody else that is praying to all kinds of spiritual entities, who are they actually praying to? Demons. There's the enemy, and we know who the enemy is. He's just fine with an alcoholic being complacent. He's just fine with an alcoholic getting sober and not knowing God. And you'll see them all in the rooms. There's a lot of old guys that I follow this red road, or I follow this, God of my understanding, this concept. Some will even say the group, some will say the doorknob, and they'll stay sober 30-some years. And it breaks my heart when I hear that, because they're not using step 11. If we're using step 11 properly, we're trying to seek God. We are trying to find that relationship with God. That's what this step is all about. If I'm not doing that, I may stay sober, but you may wake up in a place after you die that you don't want to be. So just, when you're looking at this step, always be seeking. Always have your eyes open, always have your ears open, and seek, and you will find. So, as we go through the day, so we did at night, we did in the morning, and now it's telling us what to do during the day. Here's two very important directions. We pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. This simple direction can save your whole day from a lot of misery. And this is for anybody, alcoholic or non-alcoholic. Someone cuts you off in traffic. What's the normal reaction? Flip them off, cuss at them, or worse. There's a lot worse things that could happen too. But pause, deep breath, pray. It's saying to pause when agitated. If I take that one pause, I can stop a whole lot of misery and potential amends that I may have to make for causing harm. So pausing, that's a direction that we should try to do daily, because what's the number one offender? Anger. Anger is poison for the alcoholic. And if I'm angry, what's already in my head? Selfishness, pride, and fear is already there if I'm acting out in anger. We constantly remind ourselves that we are no longer running the show. Humbly saying to ourselves each time, here's the 11th step prayer. It's the shortest prayer in the book. Thy will be done. Thy will be done. That's a prayer. When I'm going through anything, fear, depression, stress, I can't anymore, God. Thy will be done. And then it says, we are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. That pausing can, like I said, it can make the difference of a really bad day or a really good day. And we can turn it around anytime. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly, as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. It works. It really does. That's a promise. We alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined. But this is not all. There is action and more action. So again, every step that we go through, they're not telling us to stop. They're not telling us to pause. They're telling us to keep moving forward. Faith without works is dead. So where does that come from? The book of James. And what was Alcoholics Anonymous almost called? The James Club. The book of James is one of the most important books in the Bible for recovery. So they use faith without works is dead. And that has nothing to do with our salvation. Okay? Our salvation is based on our belief in Jesus and what he did on that cross. Faith without works is dead means, okay, I'm sober, I'm not drinking, can I just sit on my butt and do nothing about it? I want to take action, because if I don't take action, I'm going to get back into my own isolating thoughts. So even James was talking about this in the first century when there was no AA. So the next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12, and step 12 will start next week. But, like I said, step 11, this is the step that, you can tell who's doing step 11 in a meeting, and you can tell who is not. We should always, if we're up to this point and we don't have an understanding of God, we need to be seeking him. We need to be seeking everything, all other books. But, when that Gospel of John, when you read it, you'll know. You'll get a very good, clear idea of who Jesus is and what he did for all of us. So next week, step 12.